Ha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakam Vitamscha. Hey Krishna, Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostate, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavadishware, Rishabhanu Sutta Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha, Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So as I mentioned, we're reading from the 10th chapter, text 9. So this is 8, 9, I think it's 10 and 11. Yeah, those are called the nutshell verses. So out of all of the Bhagavad Gita, these 4 verses, 8, 9, 10, and 11 sum up the whole Bhagavad Gita. So we can all chant, if you could just repeat, Machchita Madgata Prana.
Machchita Madgata Prana
Bodhayanta Parasparam.
Buddhayanta Parasparam
Artayantascha Mam Nityam.
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Dushanti Cha Ramanti Cha.
Tushvanti Charamanti Cha
Machchita Madgata Prana.
Machchitta Madgata Prana
Bodhayanta Parasparam.
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Artayantascha Mam Nityam.
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Dushanti Cha Ramanti Cha.
Tushyanti Charamanti Cha
Machchita Madgata Prana.
Machchitta Madgata Prana
Bodhayanta Parasparam.
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Artayantascha Mam Nityam.
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Dushanti Cha Ramanti Cha.
Tushyanti Charamanti Cha
Somebody chant.
Machchita Madgata Prana
Machchitta Madgata Prana
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Tushyanti Charamanti Cha
Tushyanti Charamanti Cha Machchitta Madgata Prana
Machchita Madgata Prana
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Kathayanastacha Mam Nityam
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Tushyanti Charamanti Cha
Tushyanti Charamanti Cha
Machchita Madgata Prana
Machchitta Madgata Prana
Bodhyanta Parasparam
Bodhayanta Parasparam
Kathayantas Chamam Nityam
Kathayantascha Mam Nityam
Dusyanti Charam Ramanti Cha
Tushvanti Charamanti Cha
Machit Madat Prana
Machchitta Madgata Prana
bodhayantah parasparam
bodhayanta parasparam
कथयन्तस्य मां धृतां
kathayantascha mam nityam
तुष्यन्ति चरवन्ति च
tushvanti charamanti cha
Machchitta madgata prana
machitta madgata prana
bodhayanta parasparam
bodhayanta parasparam
kathayantascha mam nityam
kathayantascha mam nityam
tushyanti charamanti cha.
tushvanti charamanti cha
Machchita,
Machchita,
the mind's fully engaged in me.
the mind
minds fully
engaged
engaged
in
in me.
Matgata prana,
Madgata
Madgata
prana,
prana,
the lives devoted to me.
the lives
mind
devoted to
devoted
me.
to me.
Bodhayanta,
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 preaching.
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 Parasparam,
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 among themselves.
among
among
themselves.
themselves.
Kartayanta,
Kathayanta,
Katayantas,
talking.
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 Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Also,
Mam,
Mam,
Mom,
about me.
about me.
about me.
Nityam,
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 perpetually.
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 Tushyanti,
Tushvanti,
Tushyanti,
become pleased.
become pleased.
Cha,
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 also.
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 Ramanti,
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 enjoy transcendental bliss.
enjoy
enjoy
transcendental
transcendental
bliss.
bliss.
Cha,
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 also.
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 Translation. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects, on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotees are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. And in the mature stage, they are actually situated in love of God. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. There are innumerable living entities traveling throughout the different planets of the universe, and out of them, there are a few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. This devotional service is just like a seed. And if it is sown in the heart of a living entity, and if he goes on hearing and chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That seed fructifies, just as the seed of a tree fructifies with regular watering. The spiritual plant of devotional service gradually grows and grows until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and enters into the Brahmajyoti effulgence in the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky also, that plant grows more and more until it reaches the highest planet, which is called Goloka Vrindavan, the supreme planet of Krishna. Ultimately, the plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and rests there. Gradually, as the plant grows fruits and flowers, that plant of devotional service also produces fruits. And the watering process in the form of chanting and hearing goes on. This plant of devotional service is fully described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19. It is explained there that when the complete plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, one becomes fully absorbed in love of God. Then he cannot live even for a moment without being in contact with the Supreme Lord, just as a fish cannot live without water. In such a state, the devotee actually attains the transcendental qualities in contact with the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of transcendental narrations about the relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees. As stated in the Bhagavatam itself, 12:13-18, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. In this narration, there is nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. Read this read the Sanskrit first. Much chitta madgata pranaya bodhayantat parasparam. Katayantas chamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharani Namaste Sasindivadi Prastachadi Satarani. So this is one of the very important verses in the Bhagavad Gita. As I mentioned, this is a nutshell verses. This is the second of the nutshell verses. And yesterday was read Aham Savasya Prabhavo Matak Savam Pravartate Iti Matva Vajante Mam Buddha Bhava Samanditaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So Krishna is the source of everything spiritual, material. Those who are wise engage in this devotional service. And the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. They derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another. It's nice. Prabhupada gives some nice examples in here. Actually, one of those examples is how, just like a fish, you can't be out of water. You know, you can stay out of water alive for a little bit, but very little. Those who have experienced, like some goldfish jumps out of their bowl, you can stay on the floor flapping around for a little bit. Or you see some, anyway, people who may have experience, the fish can live a little while out of water, but it's totally unhappy in that situation. So that's a really good example, because how long can you live without water if you're a fish, and how miserable it would be to not have water and suffering until you finally die. So that's the way it is for the pure devotees, without the hearing and chanting about Krishna, that it's so necessary. And this hearing and chanting about Krishna, we get together. Actually, nowadays, there's so many opportunities. You know, you can be at home and you can be on so many different Zoom calls all day and all night, hearing about Krishna. So there's plenty, if we actually want to take advantage of hearing and chanting about Krishna. And this is so, this hearing and chanting is the watering process. First, the spiritual master who plant the seed of devotion in the heart. Somehow the seed of devotion gets planted in the heart by the sincere disciple. And this chanting, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, chanting verses from the Bhagavad Gita, chanting verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting about Krishna's pastimes in English or Sanskrit, just talking about Krishna. And devotees really relish that. And by hearing that, that's the water necessary. So we don't want to keep our plant that we're trying to start to grow in a desert. The desert, it's not going to grow. You have to put water. Just put things in the desert without water. You can plant seeds and nothing will grow. So similarly, with this Krishna consciousness, with this devotional service, this is the watering process, and this seed is planted and we water it and it grows. So where does it grow? It's a subtle plant. You can't see it. Otherwise, you'd see it coming out from your body and there's branches and you'd freak out. But it goes out to it goes actually all the way to the end of the universe, where the coverings of the universe are. And just like a seed in earth, when the roots go down, but then the plant comes up, it just breaks its way through. So this earth is surrounding this universe and it's so thick. And this seed, this plant goes right through that earth. And then it goes through the water and the air and the ether and the mind, intelligence, false ego, and it breaks through to the Brahma Jyoti. And then in the Brahma Jyoti, it keeps going. And there's so many different Vaikuntha planets. But for us, this plant just keeps going to a Krishna local planet. And then ultimately, it takes shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. And at that point, then there's flowers and fruits are produced. And those flowers and fruits are complete ecstasy. And this is how we can see the importance of hearing and chanting. And once we're on this platform, then we can't possibly stay away from Krishna for a moment, because our consciousness is completely Krishna conscious. It's so wonderful. Even Prabhupada's God brothers really liked that he came up with that little slogan of Krishna consciousness. No one else said that before. Prabhupada said that, and it makes perfect sense. And he explains, you can have so many different types of consciousness. You can have bird consciousness. There's people who go and watch birds. You can have dog consciousness, cat consciousness. You can have all kinds of consciousness. But out of all the different kinds of consciousness, the best consciousness is Krishna consciousness, because that is the topmost. There's nothing higher than that. And when you're Krishna conscious, you're conscious of everything. You notice everything. So this is a process. We should practice this, is try to hear and chant about Krishna throughout the service. And here it talks about how in the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. So when we engage in devotional service, this is saying in the beginning, the very beginning, you actually enjoy doing this service, devotional service. You enjoy cooking for Krishna. You enjoy bathing Krishna. You enjoy offering flowers to Krishna, making flower garlands. You actually can enjoy this. It's meant to enjoy. Sometimes devotees, you can enjoy cleaning for Krishna, cleaning Krishna's temple. And you can enjoy all of these activities. That's just the preliminary stages. You enjoy that. Some devotees don't enjoy it. They do it, it's a burden. I don't feel like doing it. Yada, yada, yada. It's like too much work. Why do I have to do it? That's the experiencing, the relishing, enjoying that service is just the preliminary stage of devotional service. Then in the mature, relish the transcendental pleasure from it. And in the mature stage, they're actually situated in love of God. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection, which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode. So we can enjoy, and then it gives the example, Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. Actually, I can see. So I'm going to read just 3 verses. I don't think I'll read all the purports, they're kind of long. But this is from the Madhya Lila, chapter 19, starting with verse 153. Upajaya Badelata Brahmananda Bedayaya Viraja Brahmaloka Vedi Parva Vyoma Paya. As one waters the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed sprouts, and the creeper gradually increases to the point where it penetrates the walls of this universe and goes beyond the Viraja river between the spiritual world and the material world. It attains Brahmaloka, the Brahman effulgence, and penetrates through that stratum. It reaches the spiritual sky and the spiritual planet Goloka Vrindavan. Actually, it's not that long of a purport. A creeper generally takes shelter of a big tree, but the Bhakti Lata, being the creeper of spiritual energy, cannot take shelter of any material planet, for there is no tree or any material planet that the Bhakti Lata creeper can utilize for shelter. In other words, devotional service cannot be utilized for any material purpose. Devotional service is meant only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes men with a poor fund of knowledge maintain that bhakti can be applied to material things also. In other words, they say that devotional service can be rendered to one's country or to the demigods, but this is not a fact. Devotional service is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it is beyond this material range. There is a river or causal ocean between the spiritual and material nature, and this river is free from the influence of the 3 modes of material nature. Therefore, it is called viraja. The word V means vigata, completely eradicated, and rajaha means the influence of the material world. On this platform, a living entity is completely free from material entanglement. For the jnanis who want to merge into the Brahman effulgence, there is Brahmaloka. Bhakti Lata, however, has no shelter in the material world, nor has it shelter in Brahmaloka, although Brahmaloka is beyond the material world. The Bhakti Lata increases until it reaches the spiritual sky where Goloka Vrindavan is situated. I'll read that verse again. As one waters the Bhakti Lata Bija, the seed sprouts and the creeper gradually increases to the point where it penetrates the walls of this universe and goes beyond the Viraja river between the spiritual world and the material world. It attains Brahmaloka, the Brahman effulgence, and penetrates through that stratum. It reaches the spiritual sky and the spiritual planet Goloka Vrindavan. So it's really nice. Lord Chaitanya is telling us about this spiritual plant, spiritual seed, and how by this simple process of just watering it, we actually go back home, back to Godhead, pass up all these things within this universe, pass up all these things beyond this universe until it comes to Goloka Vrindavan and take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So before I read some more, anyone has any questions?
I have a question, Prabhu.
Yes.
I'm eating, that's why I didn't leave my video on.
Okay. So that's not a question, is it?
My question was, the purport said only a few fortunate souls get the seed of bhakti sown in their heart. So does that mean that making the whole world Krishna conscious is never a possibility because only a few people can get the seed of bhakti?
Well, even if the whole world was Krishna conscious, it's all relative, as that is a few. That's nothing compared to all the living entities, even on this planet, let alone all the living entities in the whole universe, let alone all the universes. So I don't know what a few is, but if all the human beings on this planet became Krishna conscious, that is just a few compared to all the living entities in this universe, or in all the universes. So I don't think and also Prabhupada has said that impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. So it's certainly not impossible. He also said, if you're going to go hunting, you should shoot for the rhinoceros. In other words, that's not going to be the hardest thing to kill. If you're gonna, of course, we're not killing, we don't hunt. But if that's what you're going to do, then you go for that. And if you don't make it, it's like, well, hardly anybody can ever do that. So for us, we should shoot for trying to get at least all the human beings Krishna conscious, and forget about the whole world, even just in one area, in Hartford County, or Connecticut. If we can do that, but to try to use our minds on how are we going to attract people to Krishna consciousness. We give them books and then they come to the temple. How are we going to make it situation so wonderful at the temple that they really enjoy it and they want to come back? Stuff like that. So we have to kind of think that it is possible, but be practical, and the chances of it happening are pretty slim. How many people can we get at our temple? Can we get, let's get 1,000 people a week at the temple. And so then we have to get a new temple. That would be wonderful. We can have so many temples. But I would say it's not impossible. But even Prabhupada, when he came here and he spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, but not like everybody in the world was Krishna conscious, but all over the world, there were people Krishna conscious because of Prabhupada. And he thought that that this Krishna consciousness spread beyond what he actually thought was possible, in a sense. Not that it was impossible, but what's the exact words he used? It basically, he was more surprised, you might say, about how Krishna consciousness spread, how he was the source of spreading Krishna consciousness all over. So he never gave up, which I really like that. I wish I could be more like that. In other words, lots of times when we do something and we're very successful at it, we're satisfied. Now I've done all that. He never would be satisfied, no matter how successful he was, because there were still people not Krishna conscious. So he just kept going and going, just did the best he could until his last breath. But so we should not be successful. We did really good, and now we could lay back and relax. We should never get to that point. We have to see it. And so to try to get the whole world Krishna conscious is a good thing for you to never sit back and relax. We've still got more to do.
But Prabhupada always had the faith that it would spread, right? I mean, his Guru Maharaj's instruction, he had faith in that instruction, and he had faith that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said this would spread all over the world,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he always had faith in that, and that's so.
But I think he didn't have faith that he was going to be the one to do it.
And he never took credit for it. He always felt
He
this was
always
because
knew it was Krishna. Krishna did.
yeah, he felt, and he also said it's because of his Guru Maharaj and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's word. He never took credit for it,
Right.
But I was going to say, in English, there's a saying, "I'm going to achieve it or die trying."
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm either going to achieve it or die
Right.
trying.
I'm going to do it or die trying. Right. Right. And or achieve it.
Thank you.
Yeah, or achieve it or die trying.
I don't know if that answers it, but I mean, there's different ways you can look at only a few. It's all relative. It's just like once Tamal Krishna Maharaj told Prabhupada that, because he's getting puffed up because he's a temple commander. And Prabhupada says, you're the he says there's billions and billions of planets. What? Somebody saying something? In one universe, there's billions of planets, and there's living entities on all of these planets. And on one of these planets, it's like a speck of dust. There are so many continents, and on each continent, there's so many countries, and in each country, there's so many states or provinces, and in each state, there's so many cities, and in one city, there's so many churches and temples, and in one temple, there's a temple commander, and he thinks he's something special. Something like that, Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He wasn't a Maharaj at the time, but we're pretty insignificant. Yet we think we're we're something special. In one sense, we are special, but not any more special than anyone else. We're special because we're all pure spirit souls.
Thank you, Prabhu. It was a really nice explanation.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody else can say it, probably quote some verses about something, but that's just my logical way of seeing it. But, okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, I want to read a little more. Which one did I read? 153. 153, yeah. This is 154 from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19. Tabe yara taru pari goloka vrindavan Krishna charana kalpa rikshe kare arohana. Being situated in one's heart and being watered by Shravana Kirtana, the bhakti creeper grows more and more. In this way, it attains the shelter of the desire tree of the lotus feet of Krishna, who is eternally situated in the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, in the topmost region of the spiritual sky. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita 537, it is said, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabish Tabirya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure and who embodies the ecstatic potency, Hiladini. That's Radha, of course. Their companions are her confidants, who embodied extensions of her body, form, and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. That's the end of the translation from the Brahma Samhita verse. In the spiritual world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna has expanded himself in his spiritual potency. He has his eternal form of bliss and knowledge, Satchidananda Vigraha. Everything in Goloka Vrindavan planet is a spiritual expansion of Satchidananda. Everyone there is of the same potency, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. The relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his servitor is Chinmaya Rasa. Krishna and his entourage and paraphernalia are of the same Chinmaya potency. When the Chinmaya Rasa potency goes through the material potency, it becomes all-pervading. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead exists on his own planet Goloka Vrindavan, he is present everywhere. Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. He is present within all universes, although they are innumerable. He is present within the atom. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hrideshe Junatistati. He is also present within the heart of all living entities. This is his all-pervasive potency. Goloka Vrindavan is the highest planet in the spiritual world. In order to go to the spiritual world, after penetrating the covering of the material universe, one must penetrate Brahmaloka, the spiritual effulgence. Then, so Brahmaloka is also that we know as the Brahmajyoti, the spiritual effulgence. Then one can come to the Goloka Vrindavan planet. There are also other planets in the spiritual world called Vaikuntha planets. And on these planets, Lord Narayan is worshipped with awe and veneration. On these planets, the Shantaras is prevalent, and some of the devotees are also connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Dasya Ras, the mellow of servitorship. So on these Vaikuntha planets, there's both the servants and the passive or Shanta Ras. As far as the mellow of fraternity is concerned, the Vaikuntha Ras is represented by Gaurava Sakya, friendship in awe and renovation. So there is some friendship, but not the friendship where you're just like equals or even better than him. But your friendship, like you got some great friend, and so when you're with that person, you respect them very much and you treat them nicely. You don't joke with them so casually, like on Krishna Loka planet, but you can have that relationship at the most, that relationship on the Vaikuntha planets. So the other fraternity, Ras, is exhibited as Vishvamba, friendship and equality, and this is found in the Goloka Vrindavan planet. Above that is service to the Lord in Vatsalya Ras, fraternal love. And above all is the relationship with the Lord in the Madhurya Ras, conjugal love. These 5 rasas are fully exhibited in the spiritual world in one's relationship with the Lord. Therefore, in the spiritual world, the Bhakti Lata Creeper finds its resting place at the lotus feet of Krishna. Now, that was the second verse I read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but I'll read the translation again. Being situated in one's heart and being watered by Shravana Kirtana, the Bhakti Creeper grows more and more. In this way, it attains the shelter of the desire tree of the lotus feet of Krishna, who is eternally situated in the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, in the topmost region of the spiritual sky. So it's so nice just hearing and chanting. This is a nice way of thinking about Krishna and how we can get there just from our heart. This invisible spiritual plant grows and it's huge. I mean, we think we have huge trees here, you know, in Oregon, they got the redwood trees that are really, really big. But that's like a tiny little hair compared to where the Bhakti Lata Beach goes. You know, there's nothing that can go so big. Even there are gigantic trees. You can, by reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are mangoes that fall down that are huge and they create a river of mango juice. And the mangoes are tremendous. You get hit with one of them and you're finished. But and they describe how big the tree is, but still it may be wider, but it's certainly not taller than the Bhakti Lata that we can grow ourselves. So, you know, we have practice in a garden or plants at home. You know, you have Tulsi, you water her, you may spray her, you may do different things. Sometimes you even give some plant food. You do different things so that the plant can grow nicely. And you know, and the same thing, now we have this very delicate plant in the beginning, especially, it's very delicate. If you're trying to grow a plant from seed, in the beginning, you got to be so careful with it. You know, even like generally you grow them inside in a little, well, they got different things, but a little cup. And then when it gets bigger, then you put it in something bigger. And then eventually you put it outside. So you got to be careful. So we have this Bhakti Lata. Now, there's the watering process. But even besides the watering process, you know, in your garden, you water, and not just the seeds grow and the plants grow, but weeds come. So does anybody have any idea where these weeds come from, at least as far as the Bhakti Lata is concerned? What would cause weeds?
Offenses?
Yes. And how many offenses generally we say there are in chanting of the holy names?
At
10.
least 10.
Yeah. I don't know, someone else. 10. We have the 10 offenses to chanting the holy name. But we'd always add that little one at the end about what is it? And it's
Inattentive.
inattentive while chanting. But I don't think we really have to add it with us, because how many here are inattentive while chanting? That's like the hardest one, pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not. But blaspheming devotees is the worst offense. That now we have the seed growing. It's considered the elephant offense. It's like if you have a garden and you have little plants, even if you have bigger plants, and you have a mad elephant. You've seen an elephant, even a calm elephant walking through your garden is going to destroy it pretty much. But a mad elephant is even worse. They're just moving, knocking things. They're just throwing things all over the place. I've seen some videos in India of some mad elephants. They just knock the cars around. So this blaspheme the devotee is considered a mad elephant offense. It's going to destroy that Bhakti Lata Bij. There's nothing that can destroy it. Nothing material is going to destroy it, but offenses is the way to destroy it, and especially, the mad elephant offense is to blaspheme devotee. In other words, devotees who are trying now. We're all devotees. Everybody on this Zoom call is a devotee. Otherwise, why would they be here? And to criticize them. They do something wrong. Even if they do something wrong, we read about that a week or two ago, about if you commit some offense against a devotee, should never, even if a devotee does something wrong, you should still consider them saintly. And it gave examples of going with someone's wife. Did it say murdering somebody too? I don't remember. But whatever they do, they're going to continue, as long as they get back into Krishna consciousness, they don't give up Krishna consciousness, then they're still to be considered saintly. But blaspheming any devotee is the worst thing you can do to get this Bhakti Lata Bij growing nicely. You're chanting, and all of a sudden your plant is growing so nice, and then you say some bad things about somebody, especially when they're not even true, and you don't even know if they're true. You just hear, or you hear one side of the argument, and you take that side. There are some of the Goswamis, I'm not sure exactly which ones, but they would not ever hear anything bad about any devotee. Where we something happened, some devotee did something bad. What do you do? Where? We want to hear all this stuff. I remember in a puppet show, it was really nice. There was I think it was about Satyajit. And I don't know, I don't remember the puppet show. It doesn't really matter. But one puppet says to the other, well, I'm not one to gossip, but did you hear about such and such? So we have to be very careful about committing offenses, and in particular about blaspheming devotees. Just criticizing devotees. That's the quickest way to end your devotional service. Even if you fall down, even if you're doing so many nonsense things, we have rules: no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, no meat, fish, or eggs. Even if you take in intoxication, that's not nearly as bad. Even if you have an illicit sex, that's not nearly as bad as blaspheming devotees. Well, we got 8 minutes left. Any comments or questions?
I think you explained this before, the difference between blaspheming and pointing something that's not quite right.
Actually, another story with Tomo Krishna. He asked Srila Prabhupada, what is the difference between blaspheming, fault finding, and calling a spade a spade? And Srila Prabhupada's, and this goes good with the example I said, how he got puffed up as a temple commander. This is a whole different time. And Prabhupada said, just like I say unto you, you're nothing but a small fig. That's calling a spade a spade. And what were the other two? And then Tamal Krishna mentioned again, blaspheming and fault finding. And he kind of said, fault finding is, somebody does something wrong and you point it out. And blaspheming, it's like there is actually not even a fault. There isn't even a fault. So most of us don't do blasphemy. Most of us are just fault finders, which certainly isn't very good. But
or maybe ill intent, right? I mean, blaspheming could be also with ill intent.
Blasphemy is definitely with ill intent because they didn't do anything wrong. Just like Ramachandra Khan was blaspheming Lord Chaitanya for eating sweets. He's a sannyasi because there was ants in his room. There's ants in all these rooms, but he was trying to find fault and that was blaspheming. So blaspheming is now this. I'm not positive, but say for instance, someone says something about somebody, but it's not true, and then you start saying that, then that may be blaspheming because it's not true at all. There's no truth to it. So that would also, even though it's you're not making a story up and you may not have ill intent, you want the guy to fall down, but it's a problem. It's a real serious problem. I know when one devotee did fall down, and Prabhupada said it was 50% his fault for falling down and 50% your fault. And it was because they were saying things about, they made it so hard for him because he did something wrong, and they didn't just, have him come back. They kind of spread some rumors, so it was very difficult for him to come back. The person did eventually come back, and now he's actually left his body, but he was back in good standing again before he actually left his body. But so we have to water the plant, and we have to not let the weeds grow because the weeds can strangle the plant. So the offenses are the weeds. So, and another really bad offense is the seventh offense. So the first one is the blasphemy. The seventh is committing sins on the strength of chanting. In other words, if I say Hare Krishna purely, I can become free from more sins than I could possibly even commit. So then, hey, I'll just commit some sins and I'll chant Hare Krishna. It says that mentality is so bad. It's much worse than the sins that are committed. That offense is much worse than the sins that you're committing. So that's another big weed that's going to strangle your devotional creeper. Okay, we got just a few minutes left. Anybody else?
Prabhu, I was remembering that in that section also, it's mentioned that at the beginning when the weeds are growing, they don't look much different from the bhakti plant. So if we're not careful, then we'll be watering anarthas like fame and adoration, and then we'll only realize much later when they've grown beyond control.
Right. And it's hard to pull them out then. It's nice to have some experience in growing things to appreciate this. I'm going to read one more verse. I don't think I'll read the purport because there's not going to be time, but the creeper greatly expands in the Goloka Vrindavan planet, and there it produces the fruit of love for Krishna. Although remaining in the material world, the gardener regularly sprinkles the creeper with the water of hearing and chanting. So we need to do two things. We need to water as much as we can. And then we also need to avoid weeds growing. I mean, you can avoid weeds. Once you know where your plant is, you can rake all around. You can clean, you have to work. It's a job to keep the weeds out from the garden. Some people nowadays, they contaminate the plant itself by sprinkling some stuff that kills the weeds, but it also harms the plant. You eat the plant and it doesn't have, this is in real life. So we can't try to get a simple process to kill the weeds. It's not going to work. We have to just avoid the 10 offenses. Okay. No other questions, comments? We got like at the most 2 minutes. Okay, well, let's offer our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and all the Vaishnava devotees.
Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindhabhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Antakoti Vaishnavradanta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. His Grace Pyari Mohan Prabhu ki jai.
And Gopi ki jai for turning on the camera.
Oh, so Gopi Mataji ki jai.
I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to give it on to Gopal. He turned it on right after the end of class.
Oh.
He doesn't get any credit. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you. All glories to Prabhupada.
Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada.